It's a short drive to my granddaddy's house. 6 left turns, 4 right turns, past the high school where I spent a couple of good years, past Cleveland Elementary School, which was where my father actually did K through 12 education. I'd arrive on Chenault Road to this little 3-room cinder block house. And my visits with my granddaddy would go pretty similarly each time. We would sink into those lazy boy chairs and just talk. The room was usually set up pretty similarly. The blinds were tightly drawn. The temperature in the air was sweltering, and the air was pretty thick. You could cut it like a knife. It was kind of stifling. But we would spend time together. Now, those conversations that we had weren't really reflecting on the times that we had spent through the years, because unfortunately, my grandfather and I, despite living so closely together, had not spent much time together. I had played baseball from Little League up through high school, and I remember my granddaddy coming to one game. I also remember pretty clearly one Christmas, I think I was 10 or 11, when he decided, and it was shared with me, that he would no longer be giving us Christmas presents. Now, it clearly made an impression on him, too, because here I was all these years later, and he brought it up and felt the need to, I think, explain himself a little bit. And he said, "Jonathan, we stopped giving you Christmas presents because I thought you had everything you needed." And, of course, particularly when I got older, I realized that was true. I had the toys and the clothes and the candy that I needed. But he was wrong about something. I needed a grandfather. I needed him. Now, as I grew up, I recognized that I had some disappointment and even started to feel some resentment towards my granddaddy. But I realized as a young man, I could try to do something about that. And so whenever I would come home from college or to visit my family, not every time, but periodically, I would make the effort to make that drive out to Chenault Road and spend a little one-on-one time with my granddaddy. I would ask him a lot of questions. He would tell me a lot of stories. He had a fascinating life. He was a generous man. He did so much, welcoming refugees into his home after the Vietnam War. He told me about his own war experiences when he would break the rules while he was stationed in Europe, sneak off from the side of camp, and share his rations with a child that he knew was desperately hungry. One of the times I was visiting with him and trying to make conversation and asking him various questions, I asked him, "Granddaddy, what's one of your favorite songs?" So he couldn't remember the song and he couldn't sing the tune, but he said it's something about the vastness of the love of God, and that if the ocean were ink and the sky were a parchment, you still couldn't write adequately about the love of God. Well, I'd never even heard of this song, and I'd spent a lot of time in the church. So I did, of course, what everyone would do. I Googled it. And I found that hymn. It's called "The Love of God" by Frederick Lehman. And as I read the lyrics to that song, it stopped me in my tracks. The love of God is greater far than any tongue and pen can tell. It goes beyond the highest star and reaches to the lowest hell. The lowest hell was somewhere that I actually knew my granddaddy had experienced. One cold December night, just a couple of nights before Christmas, when my father was just a little boy, my granddaddy was working third shift at the mill to supplement their farming income. A fire began at the home. My father and my Uncle Phil escaped that fire through a window, but my grandmother and 2 children weren't so fortunate. Now, that was an aspect of our family history and the tragedy that I was aware of. It hadn't been hidden from me. But as I read those lyrics, as a young man, and as a husband, and as a father, I understood them in a new way, and there was a softening towards my grandfather. I knew that this song and that vastness of the love of God must have reached him in the lowest depths of hell. And so I typed up those lyrics. I figured I couldn't just send him the lyrics to the hymn, so I wrote him a letter. And here's what I said in that letter. "Granddaddy, I have really come to treasure these simple times in your living room, 2 adults talking. I also need to tell you, I'm really, really disappointed that we didn't spend more time together through the years. But as I have come to know you as a loyal and caring and generous man, I can see parts of you in the best of who I'm becoming. Now, I'd be lying to you that if I told you when I mailed that letter that I wasn't hoping for some great tearful reconciliation, some Tuesdays with Maury moment with my grandfather. Unfortunately, that didn't come. Over the next year or so, I didn't get a return letter. I continued to visit him whenever I was home. I saw him probably 3 or 4 times. The letter never came up. I'm not even sure if he ever got the letter. And unfortunately, but somewhat expectantly, he was well into his 90s. His health took a pretty rapid decline. He died a peaceful death after a really short stay in the hospital. The funeral was difficult for me, but difficult in a different way perhaps than it would be for most grandsons. The tears didn't come very easily, and they didn't come very frequently, but when they did come, it was extra hard because I knew they were tears not of a wonderful relationship that I had now lost, but of a relationship with a good, good man that never fully was. About a week later, I got a call from my father. He was, of course, going through the home and cleaning out things, and he said, "Jonathan, is there any sort of memento I can save for you that you'd like to remember Granddaddy by?" And that kind of stung, too. I couldn't think of anything. Not one piece of clothing that was his favorite or a picture or anything that symbolized our relationship. A few weeks later, I was home again visiting my family. And in the middle of the conversation, my father interrupted and said, "Oh, wait, hold on a second. I've got something for you." He went upstairs. He came back, and he handed me an envelope. I took out the envelope and pulled out a couple of pieces of paper. It was my letter. Of course, I immediately scoured it for underlines or smiley faces or highlights or anything that would indicate to me what that letter and what my feelings and sentiments had meant to my granddaddy. But there was nothing on it. So as I went to put it back in the envelope, I flipped over that envelope, and then a smile came to my face. And I realized that my granddaddy was right. I did have what I needed. Because there on the envelope were 4 simple letters that he had written. K-E-E-P. Keep. Thank you.